with our story about the FTX founder, Sam Bankman-Fried has asked a court to throw out most of the charges against him because he would prefer to not be criminally prosecuted for the massive billion-dollar frauds that he did. So he says, I would like very much to not be criminally prosecuted. Have you considered, not letting the government charge me? Court. So he has filed a motion to have the charges thrown out. I'm sure that will go super well for him. Let's learn a little bit more about what Sam Bankman-Fried is asking for. The FTX founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, who is absolutely, completely, totally guilty of massive, massive security frauds, has asked the judge to throw out 10 of 13 charges against him in connection with allegations he stole from customers. He totally did it. I mean, come on. Yeah, the evidence is pretty, it's pretty solid. So yeah. The three charges he's not contesting, at least at this time, are conspiracy to commit commodities fraud, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Those are just the tip of the iceberg, as they say, because many billions of dollars and many, many transactions. So the charges lists, The lawyers say in court that they want to dismiss the charges because, well, this is only one of several cryptocurrency companies to collapse. And prosecutors rush to judgment and hastily charge their client. So we're trying the everyone is speeding, but you pulled me over defense. That's what we're doing. Hey, there's a lot of crypto companies and a lot of them failed. And you rushed to judgment in pulling me over for the speeding. You didn't observe me very long speeding. And didn't you see other people who were speeding faster and there were more of them? And you didn't see me very long speeding at all. Why are you pulling me over for speeding? We're trying the everyone was speeding defense. Okay. Yeah, sure. That sounds great, Sam. Let's try that. Why are you pulling me over for the billions-dollar security fraud? So many other people are doing the security fraud. Okay. Rather than wait for traditional civil and regulatory processes following the ordinary course, the government jumped in with both feet, improperly seeking to turn these civil and regulatory issues into federal crimes. They're federal crimes. Not for nothing, but, the SEC, for example, is a civil regulatory agency. As we all learned, for example, from Wolf of Wall Street, where they had that wonderful speech on the boat with the FBI. And it's like, yes, the FBI is the one, for example, that does criminal stuff. And the Department of Justice, which is also the FBI is part of the Department of Justice, of course. The Department of Justice, the FBI, does criminal. And they've looked at this and said to themselves, we think there might be some criminal implications on top of whatever civil implications there are. So there's like, oh, why are you turning this minor bookkeeping error into a massive criminal charge against me? Why are you coming after me for speeding? So many other people were speeding. What do you mean my taillight was out? This guy didn't have his headlights on at all. Why are you pulling me over for a missing taillight when this guy didn't have his headlights on? Lol. The FTX founder capitalized on the rise of Bitcoin and other digital assets to accumulate an estimated net worth of $26 billion before, zero. And FTX went to what it would be the opposite of the moon. Because normally when you talk about like cryptocurrencies or stonks or something, you say, it's going to go to the moon, baby, to the moon. So what's the opposite of the moon? The center of the earth? Journey to the center of the earth? Something like that. We did a grand journey to the center of the earth with a molten core where everything died in fire. The cryptocurrency exchange collapsed after a number of customers' withdrawals. There was basically a run on the cryptocurrency, right? One guy who was prominent withdrew money, and then another guy withdrew money, and another guy withdrew money, and basically the Ponzi scheme fell apart, as they do, because there wasn't enough money to keep it afloat anymore. So there was a run on the cryptocurrency and, it goes to zero. Federal prosecutors have accused Sam Bankman-Fried of misleading investors and lenders and stealing billions of dollars to buy real estate, make political contributions, and make up for losses in Alameda. He's also charged with bribing Chinese officials, which is hilarious. His lawyers have asked the court to order prosecutors to turn over documents that could be helpful to defense, which of course they're absolutely entitled to. It's discovery, Brady, So sure, they filed a motion or a notice for documents because of course they did. Of course they did, right? The prosecutor is required to give it anyway, but every lawyer on the face of this earth would file the motion anyway, right? I know you have to do it. I'm still going to file the motion anyway because I want to cover my ass and also make sure, right? So of course they file the motion. They claim prosecutors only ask the company for information that aids in the prosecution. Sure, file a new discovery request. It's standard stuff. The FTX debtors have worked so extensively with the government and are so immersed in this investigation, analysis, and strategy of the government's case, they must be considered part of the prosecution's team. Wow, what a claim. Okay, so that's an interesting thing. So basically, we're now trying to turn the FTX debtors into state agents. That is hilarious. Man, that is great. All right. So basic principles of law 101 here. Okay, so we can discuss this for a second. Basic principles of law 101, right? The government obviously is bound by things like the Fourth Amendment and the Constitution in general and what the government can or cannot do. Okay. Private citizens typically are not bound by this, of course, but there is one major exception where the private people are actually like working on behalf of the government. So, for example, if the police wanted to search your home for some reason and they didn't want to bother themselves with a search warrant, the police might say to themselves, we are clever police officers. We can't be bothered to get a search warrant. But what we'll do is we'll go to a private investigator and we'll hire the private investigator, right? And we'll say, hey, private investigator, have you considered breaking into this house and searching for evidence, right? And the private investigator in this hypothetical says, sure, that sounds like a fun thing to do. And he does it, okay? Well, obviously at that point, this private investigator is no longer so much a private investigator. Now he's just a police officer. Okay, the government have now conscripted him into being a police officer. And we've seen similar things with other things. For example, in the whole Facebook stuff and Twitter stuff and the Twitter files and other social media, where the government is doing things with connection with these social media that suddenly raises the actual question, the legitimate question, hey, is Twitter now a state actor? Because we thought Twitter was a private entity, but some of the stuff they're doing, you start thinking to yourself, hey, wait a second, is Twitter really a state actor? Because that's a question you can start asking at that point. So this is basically what they're doing at this point. They're saying that these debtors who are defrauded, right, they've been stolen from, they're cooperating with the government because, they're sad about being stolen from, as one does, right? They are providing information to the government and they're helping the government. And so that turns them into actually state actors. So this would be the rough equivalent of you have had your car stolen, okay? You have had your car stolen and you're sad about that, and you witnessed your car being stolen, and maybe you got it on video or something. And so the police come to you and say, hey, you said your car was stolen. Do you have any information? Why, yes, I do. I can tell you exactly how it happened. And in fact, here's some video that I'm sharing about it. And it's like, hey, now suddenly you're a state actor because you're working with the police. Wow, that is some balls on these defense lawyers. We think that they're so immersed in the investigation. Now they're part of the government proper. Wow, what a motion. That is some balls. Prosecutors have until May 29th to respond to the request, which would probably be me laughing in their face, but in legal language. The judge will hear arguments in June, which sounds like some total bullshit. Sam Bankman-Fried has acknowledged that FTX had inadequate risk management, but maintains he didn't steal the funds. His once close associates, including Carolyn Ellison and Gary Wang, have already pled guilty and agreed to cooperate. So, they flipped some witnesses against him because they want to go after the big dog. So, yeah. His friends who were involved in this criminal enterprise agreed to making political donations in his own names that were partially funded by Alameda, which you can't do. That's a campaign finance violation. Sam Bankman-Fried's lawyers say that he did not violate election law, but he totally did because he pled guilty. The campaign finance allegations reveal again the consequences of the government's rush to indict Sam Bankman-Fried. Maybe it's the billions of dollars of theft. Maybe that's the rush to indict. Sam Bankman-Fried has largely been confined with parents' home, which, is not a bad place to be when you know about his parents' home. And he was extradited. His lawyers have argued that the campaign finance charge to be dismissed because it was not included on the surrender warrant. Wow, that's some bullshit. Right? Okay. So when we went to the Bahamas and said, we'd like to extradite you for these reasons. And now we want to charge him with things beyond that. And you can't do that. You can't charge him with things beyond what you told the Bahamas about. Yes, you can. What are you talking about? What are you just making stuff up now? You're just making up words? They've also said that other charges, including bribery, were improperly brought after extradition. No, that doesn't even begin to make sense on any legal level, right? We extradited you for some crimes. We are now charging you with additional crimes. Those two things have nothing to do with one another. What are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. Why are you just making up words? So that brings us to the end of their current discussion about Sam Bankman-Fried, who is trying to get charges dismissed against him for many, many hilarious reasons. Did you know that the victims of the crime who have told the government about them being victims are now state actors? Did you know that? And did you know that when they went to the Bahamas and asked me to be extradited, they didn't tell them about some of the charges? And you can't charge me with that now because you didn't tell the Bahamas about it, because that matters for some reason. And also the guy who pled guilty to a campaign finance violation, that wasn't a campaign finance violation. What are you talking about? And also, I didn't steal the money. Well, these motions should go over really, really well, I'm sure. And that, for the moment, brings us to the end of the discussion of this story.